Welcome back, friends. And I just want to make sure that I let you guys know everything that's going on MGO Blue Podcast. We are, some would call it the sports solstice. All four major sports were in action yesterday. And so why not? We do the same thing here. We've got Inside Michigan football, Inside Michigan basketball, and Inside Michigan hockey. So we got them all going on all at the same time. It's a sweet spot of the sports schedule. So make sure that you like, subscribe, download so that all of those are in your inbox. We also have Conquering Heroes on Thursday morning, and that's going to be with wrestling head coach Sean Bourmet. Always enjoy sitting down with him. Conquering Heroes, I mentioned that one, In the Trenches on Thursday afternoon. Obviously, it's going to be a preview of the matchup with Oregon. That's going to be 3:30 on Saturday in the Big House. Excited about the number one team coming to town. We'll see how that pans out. Now I want to bring in my partner. You could see him if you're looking at it on your left. That is Brian Boesch. How you doing, Brian?
I'm good, John. Yeah, busy time, exciting time. All three radio shows this week, fired up. This is one of the busiest times. Yes. Hey, you know what? It's good to be wanted, right? Good to be needed. And that's certainly the case right now. But hey, it'd feel a lot different without the win on Saturday. Let's be honest. If we were coming in here, I know this season has not been where Michigan fans hoped it would be, but Paul is still here. And as we get into our 7 from 77, this is kind of our, early podcast riffing, but it's also a legitimate topic because Quentin Jansen told this to you on the Monday radio show. Again, as John mentioned, you can get that on the podcast feed audio-wise. He said there was a different vibe. There was a different, the way he put it was juice around the program. And we talked last week, there was more for Michigan to lose, probably a lot more for Michigan to lose than to gain. But now, if it turns into something, if it parlays itself into more, potentially against the number one team in the country coming up on Saturday, it can be a big gain. So how have you noticed that extra, as QJ calls it, juice around the program after a really important victory?
Well, wins and losses all motivate you in different ways. And I mean, you'd always love to be motivated by a win, in the fact that there's still things to improve upon, still things to work on, but you're doing it after a win. And there's just a feeling of, there's a certain sense of relief. Like the monkey is off our back. It was 2 in a row. It was coming off a bye week, not looking good in Illinois. And then you play a rival, and that adds a little bit of juice to it. Was it because it was Michigan State? If it had been any other team, wins always feel good, and they always give you some juice, but because it was against a rival, and we talked last week about the two programs and the different trajectories they were perceived to be on. And now that Michigan has at least, put a finger in the dam and stop some of the leaking with a win over Michigan State, yeah, it's much more upbeat at Schembechler Hall. It feels a lot better. And now moving forward, it's a monumental task going from losing 2 games and getting a little bit of confidence against Michigan State. Davis Warren playing well, Alex Orji playing well in their returns to the lineup. But it's a monumental task taking on the number one team in the country. And I think right now it's all going to be baby steps. How do they build on what they got from the quarterback position? How do they improve upon what we didn't see from the O-line against Michigan State? Now, Michigan State is a good defensive front. I still felt like we should have been better against their front, up front for us. And then defensively, the secondary really wasn't tested as much as I thought Aiden Childs and that Michigan State offense was going to test them. That was 3 good receivers, and call it a flaw in their game plan, whether they got away from it or not, or maybe they were just listening to too much history. If you win the rushing battle, you're going to win the game. Wasn't the case for them. They definitely won that, but the ultimate goal is winning the game. So both sides of the ball, all 3 phases of the ball did enough to win, but there's still obviously so much that needs to continue to improve if you're going to compete against the top team in the country.
Number 2 on our 7 from 77, John, you alluded to that 2 quarterback system. So how do you envision this evolving from last week, its first unveiling? And there were sequences where Alex Orji came in those first 3 games when Davis started, but not to the level, to the frequency as the Michigan State game. We all know the offense has to be better this weekend. Every component of this team has to be better when you're facing a team like Oregon. So how can the quarterbacks offensively lead that process with step 2 of this new look quarterback setup?
Throw Donovan Edwards in there.
True. I don't mean to disrespect D. I'm sorry, Dono. We got you. He's coming up on the audio aspect of the podcast. And I mean, the rating speaks for itself. Some might argue small sample size, but we won't.
Hey, he is consistent, if nothing else. 4 for 4, 2 touchdowns. I mean, the dude could just make big plays. So obviously I'm saying that a little bit jokingly. But when you think about both of these quarterbacks, Davis Warren, Alex Orji, both of them looked more comfortable in the pocket. Not that we saw Alex Orji in the pocket, but under center. And I'll start with Alex Orji. I really like his decision-making. And when we talked to Sherrone Moore after the USC game, I was very apprehensive about calling a play-action pass to win the game with Alex Orji throwing the ball. And he said, hey, the coaching point on that play is it's either there and you nail it or you sail it. And he didn't try and force something. He sailed it. At the end of the game, when we talked to Sherrone Moore on Monday night, he mentioned that last first down, he might have been able to take it to the house. Like, he had some room to run, yet it was, hey, get the first down and get down. And he is a kid that is very aware of the situation, very aware of what's at stake for him, and willing to sacrifice any of those moments for the team win. And so love that. And I love the ball in his hands. He's such a dynamic playmaker. He's so fast and explosive. But I liked the combination. I liked how Sherrone and Kirk Campbell, developed the game plan of when to use Alex Orji, when to have Davis Warren in there. I don't think it took away from the rhythm of Davis Warren because, Davis started off the game with that one incompletion. Then he ripped off 10 in a row. And I'm not going to sit here and say, hey, they were great passes down the field. That really didn't come until the second half. And he had more misses in the second half. But you've got to develop some confidence from the quarterback position. And you've got to be able to hit some of those short throws. And then all of a sudden, hey, you give some of those medium throws. And then all of a sudden you run the flea flicker in the second half and you're able to hit a receiver on a corner route that has to be on a line, but also some touch involved. I thought he did a tremendous job of coming in, operating the offense, and not trying to do too much. He was only taking what was there. And I expect that this week against Oregon, now it's a completely different animal against Oregon, different defense, different skill sets, different athletes. I expect that they're going to take a few more shots. Now it's going to be up to the receivers. How much confidence have they been able to build up because somebody finally threw them the ball, that it could happen again. And that's where you've got to have the buy-in from the receivers, but you also need to see the progression from the quarterbacks of going through that, and it's got to be protected well by that offensive line. I liked how they did it. I do expect that we'll see more from Alex Orji at times because you can't just be an offense that puts in a quarterback that's in essence a running back. That every time he goes in, they're just running the football. You're going to have to show something off of that. And so I expect that we'll see a little bit, maybe some creativity in how they're using him and how they're calling plays for him against Oregon.
The reality is, to me, Michigan is not going to beat Oregon without an advanced, a more detailed, a more complicated passing attack. But Michigan was not going to be able to accomplish that without the steps they took this weekend. So this was the leading into Oregon, and it's a big climb, which we'll talk about here in a moment, but you needed that first background foundational step before you could get into it. And as we transition to number 3 on our 7 from 77, it's kind of bunching up the news we found out on Monday night that Jack Tuttle announcing his retirement. Remember, when he spoke to the media shortly after the Washington game, when he came in relief of Alex Orji and certainly showed some good things, then a couple of costly turnovers in the fourth quarter, he really didn't delve too much into the injury or the reason for his absence from practice during the summer. He posted on social media he suffered his 5th career concussion. He also mentioned the UCL issue he had in his right throwing arm. So he has retired from the game, mentioned like he did on our podcast last year when he arrived in Ann Arbor. The goal is to be a coach one day in some way, shape, or form in the game of football. Just thoughts on Tuttle and just how it has seemed like, again, I think we get the appreciation of what J.J. McCarthy did for Michigan by stabilizing this position, because it has been a roller coaster at the quarterback spot, really, ever since J.J. announced he was going to the NFL.
Yeah, and I've got a ton of respect for Jack Tuttle. That's not an easy decision to make, and sometimes that decision's made easier by, concussions, by health issues. And I mean, we saw he just didn't have the zip on the ball or the arm strength when we saw him against Illinois. That first play, it was kind of apparent, and now you understand a little bit more why. I think it's a tough decision. I know it was an emotional decision for him, sitting down with his family, sitting down with Coach Sharon Moore in making this decision. And the football is such a hard game to give up, and he's not giving it up. I get that. He's going into coaching, and I think he's going to be a tremendous coach. In having a chance to talk to his mom and dad, got great parents. He's set up for success. But to think about his just football acumen and what he was able to learn at Indiana, what he brought to the Michigan program, what he's learned since he's been here. I think it's going to be a great voice in that quarterback room for the rest of the season. Another perspective that he's going to be able to share, and probably maybe a little bit more freely than he did before. Not that he was holding anything back, but it changes everything now that he has officially retired as a player. But that is one of the toughest decisions that any athlete is going to make, no matter the sport. When you leave the field of competition and you're no longer able to perform on the field, that's a tough one to swallow. It really is. So a lot of respect for him, and I do think he's going to be a good coach. I'm excited to see what he does for this Michigan program, the position, the rest of the season. I'm also excited to see what happens post Michigan.
Yeah. And the reality is, oftentimes some of the best coaches are ones who had to deal with the type of career that Jack Tuttle dealt with. Injuries, by all accounts,
great players.
Well, yeah, and by all accounts, after he waited his turn at Indiana, most people around Bloomington thought he'd be Indiana starting quarterback in 2022 and got a lot of first-team reps, didn't win the job, didn't happen. So a lot of discussion about what Davis Warren's approach to the last month or so was. Jack Tuttle had to deal with that a couple of years back, and it's tough, and it's difficult to handle it the right way, and certainly Jack has seemed to do that here. All right, number 4 on our 7 from 77. We talk Oregon. We will get your keys on Thursday afternoon's audio edition of In the Trenches presented by Meyer, but this is the number 1 ranked team in the country right now. In your eyes, is it the best team in college football? And what makes this team so dangerous? I mean, what they did to Illinois from basically the opening kick in Eugene on Saturday was pretty darn impressive, considering the toughness, the physicality of a Brett Bielema-led team. Even their losses, Michigan knew it 2 years ago when Illinois came to Ann Arbor, they tend to keep it close against really good teams, and that was not the case on Saturday.
No, it wasn't. And I mean, if you believe in transitive properties, look out Michigan for what a team did to Michigan and what another team did to that team. So there's always that hanging around. But I don't think that Oregon is the number 1 team in the country. I know that they haven't lost. I think Georgia is, and I know Dan Lanning is a really good coach. I love the whole 12th man thing, forcing the NCAA to make a rule change in midseason and taking advantage of every opportunity. But I think Georgia is a better team. I know they've got a loss, and there's a lot of lessons to be learned in a loss. I'm never going to sit here and say it's a good thing, but I just look at that Georgia team and I look at the talent at quarterback. I look at the speed at receiver. I look at the size and talent and skill level of, and I'll be saying these same things when we talk about Oregon playing against Michigan. I just think that there's more in Georgia for the Bulldogs than there is right now for Oregon. And Dylan Gabriel is a terrific player, and he's a great pickup for the Ducks. But I really like what I've seen from the quarterback position at Georgia ever since that loss.
Interesting. All right, number 5 on our 7 from 77.
You disagree?
No, I don't. Honestly, I don't know who I think the best team in the country is, to be frank. Because I think every team has had a game or two where it's just, you kind of wonder. And Oregon's Oregon has had as linear of a progression this year as any team in college football. They did not look good the first 2.5 games of the season. And since then, they've looked phenomenally. So I don't want to bring up Georgia, Kentucky, because that was a while ago. I have not been enamored by Georgia compared to what we've seen, but maybe that's an unfair burden because they won back-to-back national championships and really have had 3 or 4 subpar performances in the last 4 seasons. So it's not that I just don't know. That's why I asked you the questions. That's why you make
Isn't it kind of fun though that we don't have the clear cut, like this is the dominant team in college football. And we've seen Alabama lose. We don't even know if Alabama's going to make the playoffs. It's kind of unlikely that they do. And now you got you got Georgia, Oregon, obviously a couple of Big Ten teams at Penn State, Ohio State, and you know, how does Indiana, factor into that? No, we'll talk about the Big Ten teams later, but it's very entertaining, and it's interesting to see how this new era of college football is developing.
This is a great season for the 12-team playoff to be introduced. We're going to learn a lot about how the committee views things, what teams are going to need to do, how important the record is compared to the strength of record and the strength of schedule. So, yeah, it's a good thing. I'm glad Ward hasn't called me asking for his thoughts or for my thoughts on what he should do once he goes to the playoff committee meetings. Cause it's challenging. Number 5. So we know some of the components that Michigan almost certainly needs to have carry over from last week. The fact there were no turnovers, the fact there were no penalties last week, but give me an area or two that Michigan must continue to improve in and maybe take significant strides to give them the best chance to win against the number 1 ranked team in the country.
Well, you're going to have to find a way to play better offensive line play. This is a good defensive front from, and I'm just going to say his first name because I butchered his brother's last name forever. Mateo, one of their edge defenders. Caldwell, Harmon. They're big, they're fast, they're strong. They utilize movement up front. They don't just play one way, and they're going to line up in multiple fronts. So you're going to have to be keyed into exactly what the personnel is that you have on the field and how that translates to, okay, what's the look I'm seeing? What do I anticipate this defensive line doing? What is the front 7 going to be doing? And they're going to add in an extra guy in the box. I have no doubt about that because they've got a bunch of talent on the edge for, to cover receivers. So, it's going to be a loaded box. It's going to take really good offensive line play to consistently run the ball or to run the ball at all. And then the other one is going to be Michigan secondary. I think they're going to have to play extremely well. Dylan Gabriel is a good quarterback. And I think the reason that Oregon is on that linear progression, that linear improvement that you just referenced, is because Dylan Gabriel is getting more and more comfortable in this offense. He is operating it at a high level. He's a guy that can pick up a lot of yardage with his feet. And it's not that he has to because he's a good passer and he's got tremendous weapons all over the field. So this is a tough offense and defense to prepare for. It's why they're, right now they're ranked number 1 in the country.
Uiagalelei.
Well done.
No, try it with me. Uiagalelei.
Uiagalelei.
You got it. Yeah. All right. Now I will cut that, and anytime he makes a play, we'll just have Rob in studio play that clip.
So you got it right. I'll get it right. As long as Doug Karsh gets it right, I'll get it right. I'm just going to repeat the names that you guys say. So makes my job easier.
A lot of pressure, Doug. Yeah. Rise to the occasion. I think there'll be some easier words here in this because, John, it is time for Wolverine Nation to step up this weekend. Tell our fans about a big opportunity on Saturday for fans at the Big House.
You're right, Brian. It's back. That's the 2024 Recycle Bowl. It's scheduled for this Saturday, and we're going to count every plastic, aluminum, and paper product put in a recycling bins in and around the Big House. Last season, the University of Tennessee set a world record for collecting recyclable material. This Saturday at the game, it's our chance to take that title, and we need your help. Michigan Stadium has a proud tradition of recycling and is committed to diverting recyclable material from landfills. Remember, when we all recycle at home or at the tailgate or at the game, it's the planet that ultimately wins.
No doubt. All right, we got about 10 minutes until on the video side, we have Jason Avant join us 10 minutes on the audio side until we get Donovan Edwards in here, one of the best quarterbacks statistically in Michigan football history, and that is discussed, I assure you. But let's talk Big Ten. You mentioned it. It was an interesting dynamic with Ohio State last week. They eked past Nebraska 21-17. Penn State, I thought, looked pretty darn good at Wisconsin. That's a tough environment. Wisconsin came in 5-2. They get the victory. That could have been a look-ahead spot, and you don't want to have a lot of look-ahead spots at Camp Randall, especially at night. That place can really sizzle. Your thoughts on what those two teams did in advance of one of the biggest games in college football this season, Ohio State at Penn State on Saturday?
Yeah, if you're going to sleepwalk, you want to sleepwalk at home. And I kind of felt that's what Ohio State was doing a little bit, and maybe looking past Nebraska a little bit. They were able to do that and still come away with a win. But this is going to be the biggest test for both of them. Well, not Ohio State because they played Oregon, but for Penn State, this is going to be the biggest test. And it's a test not just for the players. We've all heard, and I've been a big proponent of the conversation of James Franklin not being able to win in matchups against top 5 opponents. He's hosting this one coming up this weekend. And I think that was a tune-up. And maybe there was a little bit of a sleepwalk in the first half because they went into halftime down 10-7. And then you saw the athletes, you saw the speed, you saw everything that Penn State has to offer in the second half, scoring 21 points in the second half. And when I think about, and here's the big catch though, is I think Drew Allar is a game time decision. He got a little dinged up. And so if he plays, that's obviously going to be a huge thing for Penn State. If he doesn't, that it completely changes the outlook of this game and it lessens what we think about this game and the results of this game. So that's the big question mark coming out of last week, going into this matchup in Happy Valley.
It's interesting because in a 4-team playoff setup, this obviously, there was the divisions, so this determined the loser of this is out realistically of the conversation to go to Indianapolis in the Big Ten championship game. And certainly it still is now, but that was for one of 4 spots. This is for one of 12. And you kind of wonder, there are two competing interests here. Drew Aller's an Ohio native. He has talked about how much that game means to him. He did it last year when they lost in Columbus. At the same token, the rest of Penn State's schedule is home against Washington, at Purdue, at Minnesota, home against Maryland. Penn State will be heavy favorites in the rest of their games this year. And if you're looking at a 12-team setup, yeah, Penn State's schedule isn't all that great. But if they're 11-1 and their only loss is to Ohio State without their starting quarterback, they're in the playoff. I don't think there's any doubt. So I'm really curious how that will all play in, because the pressure from the standings and from the playoff side is on Ohio State. They have a loss. So they would be completely out of the Big Ten championship conversation. So top 4 seeds out if they lose. And obviously they still have some big games down the stretch, including against Michigan. Yeah, Ohio State will be favored in that game, of course. But it's a really interesting dynamic where it's pretty straightforward in the 4-team playoff. In the 12-team, we just don't know exactly how it'll all play out.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. And I think Ohio State with 2 losses still gets in, because you look at, the loss against Oregon. And if they were to lose this game against Penn State, it would be hilarious that James Franklin would beat Ryan Day, or that Ryan Day would be beaten by James Franklin. But you're talking about, a committee that's going to go in there and try and decide, is a 2-loss team in the Big Ten, like Ohio State, and brand will matter in this, that lost to, eventually the number 1 team in the country and another top 5 team versus number 2 in the ACC or number 2 in the Big 12. Like, to me, I think it's a no-brainer that Ohio State would still get in that scenario. Yeah, they won't have the Big Ten, championship game to play in. And this is, of course, if they beat Michigan. But, I would find it very hard to believe that if they lose this game, it eliminates them.
Totally agree. But that then opens up where you need to make sure that the good teams in the SEC aren't condensing as a bunch of 11-1 or 10-2 teams. That and then, yeah, to your point, 10-2 Ohio State versus 12-1 Miami, that may be different than 11-1 Pitt, right? So it's a long way to go on that for sure.
I'm curious how it would match up. Yeah, because we all saw what happened to Clemson in the first game, and so they've got a loss. If they ultimately lose in a championship game, or if they take a one, against anybody, their 2-loss record versus a 2-loss Ohio State, I think Ohio State would be the team that jumps them.
Yeah. No, it's we don't know, right? We don't know. It's a 12-team format. It'll be interesting. Indiana, without its starting quarterback, gets to 8-0, take down Washington 31-17. This weekend, about a touchdown favorite at Michigan State. That's not an easy spot. We saw that the Spartans, they're a tough out. Between that and anything else you're watching this weekend, what has your attention here in Big Ten play?
Well, I mean, when it comes down to it, it's, I'll be watching that Indiana game, and they're going to have to find a way to protect their quarterback. And Michigan State on the flip side is going to have to find a way to get after the quarterback. They didn't necessarily put a lot of pressure on Davis Warren, and certainly there was no pressure on Alex Orji because he never dropped back to pass. But they're going to have to find a way. They were damn good against the run, and I want to make Michigan's offensive line did not play well. Part of the reason they didn't play well was because Michigan State's defensive front really stood up. And if they can eliminate any type of rushing attack for Indiana and just solely focus on their quarterback and defending against those receivers, they got a puncher's chance.
Yeah. Other thing to watch for, the loser of USC at Washington is probably an underdog to make a bowl, especially Washington. They still have to play some really, really tough games. And then Nebraska, a chance finally to go to a bowl for the first time in 8 years here this weekend. They'll be favored against UCLA. Number 7, just a few quick hitters on the other power conferences in the SEC. 3 pretty intriguing top 25 matchups. Vanderbilt, give them credit. I mean, they grinded. They only lost at home to Texas by 3. Texas A&M rallied past Brian Kelly's LSU Tigers 38-23. And boy, Missouri felt kind of fraudulent, and that bared out with Alabama blanking them 34-0. This weekend, kind of an ugly slate. Really, the only thing I'm watching for are the teams that are, if you are looking for that at-large conversation. Ole Miss is at Arkansas. Ole Miss has 2 losses, 1 more, and they're out. Texas A&M, just a slight favorite at South Carolina, potential let-up game. We've seen South Carolina kind of be a roller coaster. What has your eyes in the SEC?
Well, it's probably that Ole Miss team. I mean, Arkansas with Sam Pittman, they're just a tough out. And Ole Miss has done nothing to make you believe that they're going to be a consistent winner. And so I'll be watching that one. In the SEC, curious as to how Florida matches up with Georgia. I don't think it'll be much of a game, but they've been a scrappy team. And I'm just curious. That one obviously at the neutral site in Jacksonville. So what is that one? The biggest cocktail party? Is that how they reference that one?
Yep, correct.
So
really make sure to emphasize tail there. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean that's the big one. In Texas A&M, taking that loss early to Notre Dame, that's a team that is really recovering and continuing to climb up and showing that they're a legit playoff contender as well. Obviously with only 1 loss, but I think as they get towards the end of the season, they could crash the SEC party.
No doubt. I mean, they finish with Texas last week of the year. Other than that, A&M has a pretty manageable schedule where, I mean, they're still unbeaten in SEC play. I mean, Texas A&M, they control their own fate to make it to the SEC championship game, which if they're undefeated in the SEC and 11-1 overall, that's just for a bye. They're in the playoff conversation at that point. Big 12, it's a 4-team race, and we're really not going to learn anything again this week. BYU took care of UCF. They're 8-0 and 5-0 bye this week. Iowa State had their bye last week. They're 7-0 and 4-0. They get Texas Tech at home. Kansas State did survive Kansas by 2 in a rivalry game this weekend. They're at Houston. And Colorado, they're hanging around. Their only chance to make the playoff is by winning the Big 12, but they're 4-1 in the league. They took down Cincinnati this week, a bye this weekend. The Big 12, I think, if you just look at a vacuum of the conference race, it might be the most fascinating conference in the country because you don't know what's going to happen week to week. Utah's 4-4. They're 1-4 in the league, and they were a lot of people's favorite to get to the playoff.
Losing your quarterback will do that.
Yeah, for sure. This was one of Kansas's most anticipated football seasons ever. They aren't anywhere close. It's a fascinating race, even if it could only create one playoff team.
Yeah, I mean, it's in terms of the quality of football, I think they're all equally matched. And I'm curious as to how they match up. Any of those teams match up with even, Miami or Clemson, in the ACC. But how they would match up against any teams in the SEC or Big Ten. So it'll be interesting to see how the committee weighs each conference.
Yeah, no doubt. ACC. This one we do have some more information on. Miami, boy, Florida State's 1-7, but hey, they might lead the ACC, so right. We'll look for that. Miami gets Duke this week, who lost in overtime to SMU. Did not have Pitt SMU as a game that was going to be a big one for the playoffs at the start of the year, but Mustangs are 4-0. Pitt's unbeaten. They blasted one loss at the time, Syracuse, last week, and a sneaky one for Clemson. They host Louisville. So we're going to find out a lot in the ACC this week.
Yeah, I'm really curious to this Duke game, and I know that Miami is like they're the front runners right now. It feels like they're the front runners in the ACC, but Duke is that sneaky team that I think could just they could throw a wrench into everything if they're able to go down to South Florida and come away with the win. I'm going to be watching that one. I think it's going to be interesting, and I know Miami is heavily favored, but it's going to be interesting.
All right, that is our 7 from 77. As always, on the audio side, we've got a player interview, and this week it's with Donovan Edwards. And here on the video stream, we've got our main man, our sideline reporter, Jason Avant. I want to start here, Jason. How good would your receiving stats be if Donovan Edwards were your quarterback?
Hey, listen, I would definitely be 100% completion percentage for sure, right? So I'll probably be 10 for 10 or something like that.
How often can they pull that one out? Because he's been on the money every single time.
These are the games to do it in. The big games, you got to pull out a wrinkle, especially when you're figuring out ways to generate offense. You got to do it. So it seems like all of these big games with big opponents, top ranked teams, everyone's pulling out something. You saw Illinois with the fake punt versus us. You've seen Oregon and Ohio State with the squib kick into another player. So you got to do it.
What'd you think of the direct snap to Samaj Morgan? Did you ever take a direct snap?
I wasn't that fast, John. So hold on, John. You got to have a little bit of speed in order to take a direct snap.
Yeah. Plus, they can see you. They might not see Samaj back there. You're big.
Exactly. I've definitely had plays where I was like down in a crouch position, behind the quarterback, in the back.
Oh, you got into a 3-point stance?
Oh, that happens sometimes. Yeah, because there were certain plays that we did, especially with the Eagles, that were like only I can do the play because I had good quickness and being able to get in and out of my breaks. So I had to like disguise where I was for a brief moment before they figure out what the play was.
So do you have a favorite trick play or just one-off that you ever were a part of in your career, whether it's Michigan or in the NFL?
You know what I love? I don't know if you guys remember, we were getting our doors blown off at Minnesota one year, and we came back and won the game. And it was a throwback to John Navarre, who took 17 years to get in the end zone. So
that was the Metrodome, right?
It was the Metrodome.
Yeah.
We were losing like 28-3 or something crazy like that. It was bad. We were getting the doors blown off. And it was a throwback. I remembered it because the play took so long to develop, and I was the guy blocking for Breston because Breston was a high school quarterback. So it was a throwback to Breston left, and then he throws it to John Navarre to the right with the line set up. And I remember like, dude, this safety running full speed at me, and I had to hold his block for a good 3-4 seconds. And so that was probably my favorite trick play.
All right, so awesome. Now that you've had some time to digest what happened on Saturday, I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on the win against Michigan State.
I thought it was a huge win. I know that everyone's, they're concerned with not being in a playoff, and you can't do anything about that now. But this was a rivalry game. Michigan State had Had some players, made some plays. Aiden Childs presented a lot of problems for us, and our defense kind of stood in there. And I was impressed with the way that they were able to generate offense. It wasn't a bunch of offense, but if you're going to go to a 2-quarterback system, you got the guy that throws it the best in Davis Warren, and then you got the guy in Alex Orji who's protected the ball most and is the most dangerous when it comes to running the ball. So they were able to find different ways in order to generate offense. So I was very impressed with that. At the start of the game, I'm like, dude, how in the world are we going to get into the end zone? And they figured out ways to do that. And I think that's a sign of a team that's starting to figure it out. This may be one of those situations where they get better as the season goes on and may have a shot. You never know with Oregon. This is what college football is about. It's about going into games like this where nobody gives you a chance. And if you can do that versus Michigan State and come up and build, I think you can, do some things. The other thing I'll say, John, is that I thought Kirk Campbell, whoever it was, Sharon Moore, I thought that they thought outside of the box. They just, they came up with variety. Some overs, Don, Samaj. It was a lot of different wrinkles that we hadn't seen all year. So we have to continue down that creative path.
Quarterback wise, how do you take what Michigan's duo of Davis Warren and Alex Orji did and build upon it? Because John and I talked about it earlier on here. Michigan's quarterbacks, a lot of players on Michigan have to be better than they were Saturday to beat Oregon. But I don't think they could have made that step to what they need to become without what they did against Michigan State, right? That was the building block into hopefully a more advanced, more complicated, more successful quarterback combination. So what did you see from those two that they can build upon and add to for what has to be a dynamic game plan against a team like Oregon?
What's the most important thing that they did was protect the football. And that's the number one thing that gives you a shot. You lose usually in these games like this, whoever protects the ball has a pretty good chance of winning or at least staying in the game. So I say at the bare minimum is that they were able to protect the football. And I like the things that was done with Samaj. They put him on, they looked at the receivers that they had, and they said, okay, who can we focus on? Who can affect the game? We know that Colson Loveland can affect the game. We know that Samaj Morgan can affect the game. Let's get those guys the ball in situations that are advantageous to their talent. So I thought Davis was pretty good with getting the ball out of his hands. I thought that he didn't take many chances that will put the team in a compromising position. And then the thing that's going to take this to a different level is that when Alex Orji starts to pass, we're not talking about 20 passes or 15 passes or 10 passes. We're talking about in a situation where everyone in the stadium knows that he's in there to run the ball. And when you can get down low and you can put the ball at the running back, you can fake it up in there like you're doing a quarterback run. And there you hit an over route or you hit a go route where people thinking that you're going to run the ball. I think that's the next evolution of this offense is when Alex Orji starts to throw the ball out of his specialty package.
Yeah, I mean, it's not that different from the pass that we saw from Donovan Edwards, right?
Yeah.
You're selling the run, and then all of a sudden, hey, there's no question that Alex Orji has the arm strength. We saw it by the way he threw. He overthrew. He's overthrown Fred Moore. He's overthrown Samaj Morgan. It's just a matter of accuracy, and if he can hit that down the field, now all of a sudden it does become a much more threatening offense.
Yeah, it does. And here's the thing: I thought that they did a good job. And you're right, completely. I thought they did a good job with Davis Warren of doing things that he's good at. Over the middle, Colson Loveland, just doing things like that. The one play that scared the brakes off of me was that comeback route to O'Leary. He bounced it to him. I was like, dude, thank goodness. Who decides to throw a comeback route in college? In this situation, when you know the guy's not like a burner, only people that can run comeback routes are dudes that are freaking 4.3s. Like that's the only way you throw that. If he isn't, don't throw that. Huh?
That's not him.
It's not him. Like KYP, you got to know the personnel. Great player, but you for as far as the quarterback and the receiver, do what they're good at.
I think something that we watched with Alex Orji that was not what Kirk Campbell, Sherrod Moore probably wanted when Orji was the starting quarterback, but might be helpful as they try to add in some pass game wrinkles when Orji's on the field. Orji, when in any doubt, he would not throw the football. And I think that was probably some issues and some progression and some confidence and all of that. But I do think it has to help if you do have, like you were saying, Jason, not 20 passes, not 15, not even 10. But if you have a few opportunities for him to pass the football, he's not going to force it if it is not there, which to me raises the potential floor of those types of calls. Because you're right. If you commit a turnover against Oregon, you are shooting yourself in the foot to the nth degree. But I'm curious if that will be a potential rationale for them to say, yeah, we trust Orji's not going to put us in a bad spot if the unique trick-esque play is not there for us.
No, you have to do it. And Alex has definitely shown that, right? So here's the thing. There are so many ways my brain gets to work, and we have this play that Samaj is in motion, and he's and they have guys blocking out there for him, and he's like this flat throw, the one that Davis Warren threw low to him this week. Oh. That's a play that Alex Orji can run, and they can fake that and run a receiver down the field, and when he's blocking, just a fake receiver screen down. That's when you can run. Everybody's beating our team on double moves. Why don't we run double moves? The only double move I can remember is Fred Moore in what was it, USC that we missed. With Alex Orji. It may not have been USC, but it was Fred Moore and Alex Orji. He overthrew him. But those double moves work. So you put those guys in that position where he's faking a run a double move on the outside like he's stock blocking, and throw it up to a guy. That's the one thing that we don't do enough of. That is a very safe play if it's a one-on-one. If you can get the safety out of the way and it's a one-on-one with a college receiver and a college cornerback, the college receiver is going to see the ball or the college DB is going to panic, which gives you yards as well. So I don't think we utilize the jump ball enough. Once you get to the pros, that jump doesn't work. But in college, it works like a charm.
I want to switch to the defense, because obviously Will Johnson's wasn't there this past weekend. What did you see from Jair Hill, Amir Hall, the guys covering some of those young college corners that you're just talking about?
It's going to be a test this week, because I think this is the best receiver group in the country. Here's the thing that I like. Amir Hall in particular has the ability, the mentality to go and get in your face. That speaks more to me than anything. If you have the ability to want to be in a guy's face, that talks about confidence, that talks about, competitiveness, and that's what you need. Especially the opposite. Think about it like this. If you're a guy that doesn't run as well as, Will Johnson or whatever, a lot of people think you should be off. No, you need to be in a guy's face to stop him from using his speed so you can touch him more. So you need that, like the bigger corners in the National Football League and or college. If they get their hands on you, they minimize your speed. So I think our guys need to do a better job of that. I thought that they played really well versus Michigan State. They went to a little bit more zone in situations that I thought that they would usually go man, but they're matching a lot better. And I saw the emergence of Makari Page in packages in the slot, and then Zeke Berry came in later in the game. So I think that Wink Martindale is starting to figure out ways to utilize these guys, but I think Jair Hill is definitely trending as well. Once these guys get the confidence to get up to the line of scrimmage, I think we'll be fine. But this is definitely going to be a zone coverage game. Yeah, I don't see us playing a bunch of man-to-man throughout this game. I don't think we can hold up that way.
Impressions of Dillon Gabriel, the quarterback for Oregon, and I think an area where the stats, I think, really tell a good story. Gabriel was sacked 7 times in Oregon's first 2 games. Remember, they beat Idaho in a game where they scored a bunch of yards but made a bunch of mistakes. They only won by 10 and then barely beat Boise State in week 2. Since then, they've taken off. 7 sacks in the first 2 games. Just 3 total sacks of Dillon Gabriel since. I'm not saying it's as linear as, oh, hey, if you sack Dillon Gabriel, you can win the game. But I do think that's a key component that can help the secondary, right?
It can help the secondary. It's tough to sack the guy. The reason is because his target is always open. And they get the ball out of their hands, and they run a system that you're going to get a lot of dink and dunk at the line of scrimmage, and then you get shot plays. You don't have an intermediate passing game with them. It's either line of scrimmage trick type of plays, whether that be, and then you have your shots down the field to Evan Stewart and Tez Johnson. You got all of those things happening. They're not an intermediate team. They're either little or big. So he gets the ball out of his hands, and then they balance it with the run game. This dude is completing 75% of his passes. That's unheard of. It just doesn't happen like that unless you're getting a lot of easy throws, and that's what he does. He gets a lot of easy throws. So this will be a hands up at the line of scrimmage game. Hopefully. John, you know how irritating that is for offensive linemen, is that when a dude takes a couple steps, pushes into you and gets his hands up and bats down the ball, the coach is yelling at you like you can do something about it, right?
Oh, I can. Absolutely, I can. As soon as they put their hands up, I'm running right through their belly button. And you might hit something that, hey, if you hit something, you hit something. I have ways, if you put your hands up, to get them down.
To get them down, yeah. So the coach is always yelling at the offensive lineman about getting their hands down. I'm like, dude, what can they do about it?
But I mean, if that's the case, and hey, we're batting a bunch of balls down, or if I'm playing against a team, I'm taking that as a play caller, and I'm saying, you know what? Hey, I'll call 3-step drops. Yeah. Then I won't even let this offensive line step back. It is instantly, hey, it's 1 step, and I'm going to come out and cut your ass.
Yeah, this is a second level tackle game. It's a second level tackle game. The linebackers and the third level, second and third level tackle, if they can put guys on the ground without giving them much yards after catch, we got a shot, because that's going to be the crux of their offense. And now when you have Josiah Stewart playing the way that he's playing, and we got to get Derek Moore going a little bit more. Once we get these guys going, I think once they get to those down the field throws, then our pass rushers can get involved. But they like to run the ball first. Dan Lanning is doing that well. Dillon Gabriel is running it as well. So there's a lot of things that they do well.
Yeah. Get your comments, questions in here. We always appreciate Dakota Kidd. Also David for weighing in with his thoughts. And I want to kind of tee this one up here for you, Jason, with our friends at another college football podcast. Avant is a living legend. He's calling a Fred Moore type Avant catch from back at 2003 against Northwestern this weekend. So
I would love to see it.
Yeah, call your shot on what receiver is most likely to deliver a big time catch or a big time play in this, or a big time game in this one. Because listen, Colson Loveland might be Michigan's leading pass catcher and pass yards guy all season long. That's all well and good, but he can't be the only one, especially in a game like this one against Oregon.
I'm going to say Samaj. I thought his role increased this week, and they used him on some stop routes and some third downs where he converted them. We haven't been a good third down conversion team when it comes to, just throwing like patterns and things like that. And I thought they like something in there, and he's catching the ball with his hands. So I think that they're going to give him the most opportunities. Do we know if Marion Walker is going to play this week?
I don't know yet. That was going to be my guy if he's available, because he's the guy that they've earmarked as he's our burner. He can get downfield. Double move that you're talking about, I think they use a double move with him. He's also the biggest guy that can go up for some of those 50-50 balls. 50
balls, yeah. So it will either be Fred Moore or Marion when it comes to down the field throws. But I think Samaj can be a guy that kind of balances this team off in the slot and doing third down things.
I mean, it was very clear week 3, week 4, Michigan was trying to draw up stuff for Fred Moore. Then it was a Marion Walker once he was back and kind of up to speed with everything after transferring back. Now with Walker out, I wonder if they do turn to Frederick Moore to see what he could potentially give. A few more minutes here with Jason Avant before we've got to run. I want to get your thoughts on Ohio State, Penn State this weekend, how you think that one can go, and who you think is going to win at noon in Happy Valley this weekend.
They've been hearing it for a long time of not being able to beat that team from down south, right? So I think that Penn State may pull this one off. And I think that Ohio State is in a situation where they are trying to be more Michigan than Ohio State. Ohio State is not a team that just buries it and runs the ball. And they're doing that. And it hurts them at times where they focus on running the ball so much that they don't get the ball to their playmakers, which is Jeremiah Smith, Buka. Yeah, they don't get the guys the ball to those guys. So I think that can be right into the hands of Penn State. So I think Penn State mess around and pull this game off for the first time in a long time.
All right. So we got this cut from a different cloth. John Jansen will share that on Thursday's audio edition of In the Trenches presented by Meyer with his locker room speech. But Jason, if you were an advisor to the Michigan football team, which I think sometimes you are out down there,
Yeah.
you're helping out. What would you tell them to do to win this game?
I would give them a speech as I would want it, is that I would tell them that first thing is that you always be more successful if you think about the team than you do yourself. Don't worry about stats. Don't worry about who's getting the credit. Don't worry about any of those things, because when everyone wins, or when we win, everyone wins. And then I will let them know that, listen, man, go out there and let your personality show. This game is fun. Be uniquely you. I would also tell them is to fear nothing, attack everything. That's something that you do in a game like this. I would rather be in a battle and come out with no bullets than be there coming back with a clip full of bullets. You got go out there and attack it. And I would always tell I remember that Winston Justice was a left tackle for USC, but he was with the Eagles, and he would struggle at times. And the organization would get on him, Philly fans would get on him. And he developed this habit of just catching all the time. I was like, dude, man, let your hands go. Like, what are we doing? Like, punch sometimes, change it up, but punch. And I think that's the thing that you tell this team. You got nothing to lose. Everyone is out there thinking that you're going to lose this game. Let your hands go. Coaches and players, let it go. Let your hands go, and figure out what's going to be at the end. That's it. That's all I'll tell them.
I'm pretty good, John.
I'm saving mine for Thursday. I might have to steal something about that clip.
Yeah. Oh man, I love it. Yeah, Dakota believes. And he told us in another comment that he has lived in Eugene the last 30 years as a Michigan fan. So it's a big one. It's a big one for Dakota kid.
Yeah,
here.
let's go, Dakota.
John, I have a couple non-football things for Jason. Do you have anything else before I delve into a couple of off the wall topics?
Oh no, let's get off the wall. I want to see where this is going.
Oh, it follows what you talked about with Quentin Johnson on the radio replay of Inside Michigan Football. Jason, give me your Halloween candy breakdown. Will there be trick-or-treaters at your house on Thursday, and what will it look like for them? How do you handle the candy selection, the display? Break it down for us.
So I don't have a big display, but I make sure that the trick-or-treaters are taken care of. I usually go to Walmart and I buy whatever's there.
You go to Meyer, Jason. You go to Meyer. Proud supporter and fan of the
Sorry, Meyer. There you go. My bad, Meyer.
In fairness, is there a Meyer in Philly?
No. But
sorry, go ahead.
I'm just messing. Here we go. So I'll go to wherever department store, Meyer, and buy Snickers, all of the big boys, right? You want the Twix, the Snickers, the Reese's, you want all that stuff. And then I'll get a bunch of filler candy, and I'll usually set out two can I say Home Depot or Meyer buckets full?
Sure, yeah.
Right? Of candy. And I usually put a note on my door because I'm usually not at home to give it out to the kids. But I usually leave it buckets full, and I usually say, listen, take a handful of candy. It's your chance to do the right thing. Think about somebody behind you. And usually these teenage kids come and dump it all out anyway. I check on the cameras. But I leave it out there every year.
So, okay, you said filler candy. So what's the filler candy? What's the stuff you're not as enthused about?
It just has to be in a wrapper. I'm not a big fan of candy that's not in a wrapper. So candy corn is a no-go for me.
Okay. David's got it right here. This is perfect here at the bottom. Reese's for Wolverines, candy corn for Spartans. Get rid of that. Yes. Reese's is number one. Is your number? You said Snickers first. Is Snickers your number one?
Yes, Snickers, Twix are definitely my number one because those are my favorite. So I just assume that everyone loves those. But I have Reese's there too, and I usually have like filler candy. When I say filler candy, we're talking about like Now and Laters. We're talking about Laffy Taffy, stuff like that. You know, I don't know if they have what's the candy in a wrapper. It's a bunch of I can't remember the name of it.
Tootsie Roll,
Starburst or Starburst.
Starburst. I got all that Tootsie Rolls, all that stuff. It's in there.
I think the fillers like Milky Way, Three Musketeers, like you're kind of leafing through those in order to find the Twix or the Snickers or the Reese's. John, how would you assess what you're hearing from Jason? I think you're largely on the same wavelength, right?
Yeah, we're pretty close. And I'm 100% support the whole candy corn is garbage, absolute garbage. You know what? Any Spartan or any Buckeye that comes by. That's the garbage can. You have it in, you take it out of there, maybe previously chewed a little bit, and you dump it in there. Unless they're, you know, what, a little 6-year-old princess. I'm not going to do that. They don't have that choice. That's the parents' choice, right? And so, yeah, chocolate is always the go-to. Reese's always a go-to. Love those. And for the ones that come up with the real, a legit costume. I'll have some in the freezer and I'll say, hey, you want a frozen Reese's peanut butter cup? Oh, and if they say, yeah, I'll be right back. You got to earn that one.
You got to earn it.
Yeah, you got to earn that one. But I along those same lines, I do want to ask you though, are you dressing up?
Ooh, I won't dress up for that day, but there'll definitely be like a dress up like Halloween salsa party somewhere. So I'll dress up for that.
Well, what does a salsa dresser dance up as?
It could be anything. I've been Jackie Robinson before. I've been LL Cool J. I've been the scary clown before. I've danced in the clown. With one hand, I have a knife. The other hand, I'm like spinning the girl.
How long this is like the third or fourth time you've referenced salsa dancing. How long have you done that?
I started in 2019. So yeah, it's about 5 years. It's about 5 years, and now I'm pretty good at it. But here's the thing: I kind of did it a little bit growing up, but I didn't do it like technically and organized. And now it's like organized competitions and all that stuff.
Yeah. Okay. That's awesome.
So it's fun. But the kids may want me to dress up as something, so I got to talk to them today.
Have you ever seen someone dressed up as you?
Oh no, that would be messed up.
What are you talking about? Messed up?
There's got to be some Avant Eagles jerseys rolling around there.
Maybe back in the day.
Oh man,
they had this creepy song, this Jason Avant song. So I wouldn't be surprised. They had this song that Philadelphia Eagles fans had a Jason Avant song.
Yeah, but now they're going to show up in a Michigan ball cap and a microphone. I'm Jason. I'm a sideline reporter.
And John will make fun of you at some point here down the road. Probably too much clothing because you won't be able to rough the weather conditions.
No, Jason shows up in shorts all the time. I mean, he's ready to rock and roll every time. He's no Doug Karsh, right? Doug Karsh, gloves, hat, 5 layers of clothes. He's the kid. He's the guy that you can't put his arms down to his side. Like he can hardly get the mic up to his face because he's got so many clothes on.
Hey, be nice or he's going to pronounce his names wrong for you, John. You won't be able to parlay them.
John,
remember, you're leaning on Doug for the pronunciations. You better be nice here.
You better be nice.
Yeah. I mean, by the time he listens to this, it'll be too late for him.
You were back in the day with Coach Carr when we had to be tough and not wear sleeves. Remember that?
Back in the day, that's my entire life.
Oh man.
Hey man,
days I'm like, dude, I want sleeves, dude. I just had to say it. I braved it, but there were some games where you're like, dude, sleeves.
Sure, but you don't have the insulation that I had when I was playing. I had built-in insulation. That's why I never pulled a hamstring. I always had extra, oil.
How many of those frozen Reese's cups?
Yeah, all those. Yeah, and the frozen Reese's cups. Yeah, as many as you want. It was encouraged.
You know something about hamstrings? I used to get so mad when I would pull a hamstring. I'm like, dude, I'm not fast enough to pull a hamstring. This is annoying. Like, that's supposed to be for somebody else.
I know. I didn't pull a hamstring until age was a factor because speed was never the factor.
Never.
Oh gosh, I wish we could continue, Jay. I wish we could do this on Saturdays because, man, the stream of consciousness of Jason Avant is about as good as it gets. But I appreciate you coming on. Good luck with Halloween this weekend. I hope those think of the people behind them when they show up on your doorstep. But great stuff as always, Jason. We appreciate the insight, Jon as well. And we'll get this rolling on Saturday.
All right, see you guys this weekend.
Go Blue.
Go Blue.